You're listening to The Scoop on Ultrasound, where the world of ultrasound imaging comes alive through dynamic conversations. This episode is brought to you by EDM Medical Solutions. In this episode, you'll be hearing from Denise Levy, a trailblazer with 50 years of experience in ultrasound imaging. She has helped shape the future of imaging by working alongside other pioneers, such as the renowned Dr. Kenneth J.W. Taylor. Denise has also co-authored several texts, including the Atlas of Grayscale Ultrasonography. As the technical director of Hill Vascular and Vein Center in San Jose, California, Denise continues to be an active practitioner and leader. You won't want to miss out on her insights on operational efficiency, leadership, and the emerging trends transforming medical imaging.
Quality supplies make a difference. At EDM, our mission is to help you enhance patient care. For over 30 years, we have been a leading supplier of medical imaging products and accessories. It all started with one product, Crystal Ultrasound Gel. And now our catalog includes over 300 products designed to support your practice. From probe covers to needle guides, EDM Medical Solutions is the partner of choice for over 2,000 healthcare facilities in the U.S. Learn about our range of ultrasound solutions on our website by visiting us.edm-imaging.com.
Our guest today is someone who has not only witnessed the evolution of ultrasound technology, but has also contributed to shaping its future. Joining us is Denise Levy, a vascular technologist and the technical director of the Vascular Lab at Hill Vascular and Vein Center in San Jose, California. Denise brings 50 years of experience. This is her 50th year in ultrasound and vascular technology, from pioneering early imaging techniques to leading advancements in patient care. Her journey is one of passion, innovation, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. Her career began as an X-ray technologist, where she gained 16 years of experience in general X-ray before specializing in vascular, general, OB, and cardiac ultrasound. Denise has held certifications as an RDMS, RDCS, and RVT since 1975. She has also served in supervisory roles at 2 hospitals in San Jose, focusing on vascular ultrasound and interventional radiology. Denise has also published and presented several scientific papers over the years at conferences such as the American Institute of Ultrasound and Medicine and the Radiological Society of North America. Throughout her career, Denise has collaborated with notable figures in the medical field, including Dr. Thomas Fogarty and Dr. John Simpson in the field of intervention, and Dr. David Chang, the developer of TCAR procedure. Her experience in vascular surgery includes work with balloon angioplasty and technologies from CSI and Boston Scientific. Denise is also a published author, having co-authored the Atlas of Grayscale Ultrasonography with the renowned Dr. Kenneth J.W. Taylor. She also co-authored the Ultrasound Exam Review, Sonographer Self-Assessment Guide by Marvin Craig. Denise's specialties include vascular ultrasound testing, ultrasound-guided surgical procedures, and transcranial Doppler studies. She has worked in the clinical sector, in the academic sector, and the commercial sector. With such a stellar background, it's exciting to get the chance to sit down with Denise and hear her insights on operational efficiency, patient care, leadership, and the emerging trends that are set to redefine the field of medical imaging. Thank you, Denise, for joining me today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me and having this voice for others that can learn from my experience.
So as I said, you truly have a stellar background in ultrasound imaging. I mean, you've gotten to work with some pretty amazing people, such as Dr. Kenneth J.W. Taylor and Dr. Chang, among many others over the years. It's evident by your track record that you have not just been a sonographer for a long time, right? You've also been actively involved all over the years through your work and through your contributions, which is just so great to see. That being said, I'd love to get the chance to hear about what started all of this. I think that for clinicians listening to this, especially newer ones or even mid-career professionals, they'd probably love to hear about that from someone such as yourself. So what initially drew you to the field of imaging, and how has your passion evolved over the course of 50 years?
Well, I think it started with when my sister, 1 year ahead of me, went to Boston to go to school, college. And I really wanted to follow her. I wanted to go to an academic background, going from Portland, Maine to Boston, Massachusetts. And I was fortunate enough to get into the radiology program at Northeastern and Beth Israel Hospital, which was a Harvard hospital for children's, the Leahy Clinic. And Beth Israel was really at its top of the game with newer X-ray technology. And it was there that I rotated through ultrasound with one of the greatest pioneers and one of the founders of, back then it was ASUTS, which was the American Society of Ultrasound Technology, with Elie Snitzer. He was at our hospital and he was the sonographer and one of the first in New England. So Elie was instrumental in having the get into ultrasound with Dr. Ross Brown for the 1 year ultrasound program. But before, when I was in X-ray, it was a co-op program. And so we were in school for 2 weeks, and then we were in the hospital for 4 weeks. And it was a 2-year program. I remember one morning I was called to the OR to do an OR cholangiogram. And we have to put the X-ray plates in a sleeve and basically pull it down through the table and kind of figure out where the upper quadrant of the patient is on the X-ray, on the OR table. So we had these little marks, these little lines, stop here, pull it down to here. You know, it was a sleeve. You basically had to take 3 X-rays and pull them down through, and hopefully they were under the patient and your X-ray was over. So I got called in to Dr. Wild Bill Silent, who was a very famous surgeon. People came from all over the world to be operated on by this man. And he wrote a book on examination of the abdomen, acute abdomen, and it's used today, even in the Harvard Medical School. But Dr. Silent, was very, very particular. So I took the X-rays and I brought them back, and he threw them up on the board and he goes, "You young lady, I want you in here for every one of my exams from now on." And I said, "But Dr. Silent, I'm a 2-year student." And he said, "I don't care. I want you in here." And I think what really impressed me was, here is this famous man and all these people around him to support him. And without us, he couldn't do his job. So I think that's what really impressed me upon teamwork and feeling like you are a part, feeling like your goals and your skills are appreciated, your talents and your patient care goes all the way from the ER to the OR to the ICU. And I think that's what really made an impression upon me, was that my work was appreciated and my attention to detail was appreciated and needed.
Wow. Yeah, that's a powerful story. Healthcare really is an ecosystem, right? And patient care is an ecosystem. There's so many people participating. And I think sometimes it's easy to think maybe as a student, right, that you're siloed.
Yeah.
But then you realize, wait, there's actually a big team here. Like, everyone's playing a critical role, right? It's not just the doctor. It's also not just the sonographer. It's everyone together. And that is such a great story. Wow. Now, moving on to the more practical operational side of things, because of course, with someone such as yourself, that you have so many years of experience, I know that a lot of listeners want to hear about how you've achieved such success consistently over the years. So could you tell us, when it comes to operational efficiency, which is a big topic, especially for managers and admins, right? So the managers of labs, technical directors such as yourself, there's sometimes a pressure, depending especially on the type of clinic you're in, the setting you're in. You feel like there's a pressure from admin to be more efficient, to push harder. Can you provide examples of processes that you've implemented or tools over the years to enhance operational efficiency, especially that part of over the years, because you aren't just seeing this, of course, from the now, you have many years to tell us about. So could you just tell us how maybe that's also evolved and just the things that you've learned?
Well, again, it goes back to the team and scheduling. Scheduling is so important to educate your schedulers. What exams are done in the morning? What are done in the afternoon? How do we prep the patient? How do we schedule the patient? What machine should they be on? Make sure that your staff is all trained in that area. Make sure that your staff is all trained in every single exam. Because when I was in some settings, people would say, "Oh, let Denise do it. She only does the proximal vertebral. None of us want to do it." Or, I do my carotids in 5 minutes. No, you can't do that. You have to spend some detail and get everything you need. So really, setting up success is having a good schedule and not creating a schedule that cannot be met. You have to look at how long does this exam take? You have to give that person the right amount of time to do the right job. You can't simply just limit something and go in and do an artery at a spot check. You've got to know the inflow. You've got to know what's coming into that leg, what's distal to that leg. You've got to know the size of the vessel. You've got to prepare the patient properly. If you have a patient that ate, burritos the night before, you're probably not going to see their aorta in the morning. So there's many, many different exams that you have to educate the schedulers and the people that are seeing the patient after. So that's very important. Also, the getting your staff trained. Like I said, they should all know the protocols and be competent in every single exam that they do, and not pass it off to someone who is maybe more expert in that situation. You can train them so that they have the confidence that they can do it themselves. I think that's what comes out of it, is communication with the front desk and, patients being seen the same day. What are the results? They have to communicate to the physician. You know what? I couldn't see it that well, and I think the arteries are occluded. That information is so important for following up the patient. Plus, you have to know if you're doing a proper exam. Look at the chart. Make sure that you're ordering the correct test. Make sure that what you're doing is going to make sense. I worked at a hospital once where there was no teamwork. And I left because of it, because they would just tell me, just go do it because I said so. And it's like, well, doesn't it, won't this give us this, and this? And there was no teamwork. Then there was no real plan for, say, a trauma team when they were looking for DVT on everyone every single week. And I said, well, why don't we just start measuring the calf? We start measuring the calf, then we'll know, okay, the calf is bigger. Let's get an ultrasound. So it's just, again, I think it's teamwork, and for success, and making your team feel confident in what they do is very important.
Right. Now, not to, attack administrators, but I have heard from some clinicians that they feel that over the years, especially in larger hospitals or just larger systems now, there's this sort of administrator class that has appeared over the years, a sort of bureaucracy, so to speak. Do you feel that imaging managers, so clinicians who are managing others, play a certain role as advocates between the clinicians and then the admins to advocate for environments then that are efficient, and also at the same time, though, do not burn out the sonographers or the technologists working in that place, because that is a big issue which we have now. What have you observed over the years in that sense?
I was on the stroke team and was one of the first Bay Area hospitals to be accredited, and that was Good Samaritan in San Jose, California. And we were given great opportunities to go in and see the patient within the first hour. And back then, they weren't doing the things that they're doing now. But the neurologist would be right over my head saying, time is brain, time is brain. And we all realized it. And to find out that, yes, the carotid's open. And then when I did transcranial Doppler, to find out that the middle cerebral was open, the ER recognized that we were instrumental in the stroke team. And I think having the cooperation from the administrators in the hospital for giving us the extra time for the staff, because it costs money to have people on call. But given that, we were able to adjust our schedule, and I was in a supervisory role, so that if it meant sense for me to go home and give my staff hours, then that's how we were able to adjust our budget. I think that the administrators in the hospital were very supportive, and oftentimes they would just call me down to the ER and say, Denise, this patient has this, this, and this. What do you think I ought to order? It was a very simple thing. Well, if it's a swollen leg, let's get a DBT. If it's cold leg, let's get an artery. It's just things like that. And I involved the physicians. I would bring them in to the room and show them our findings. So I think working with a cooperative administration instead of you can't do this or you can't do that. Well, what can we do? What can we do to get this going and get your lab accredited? It's very important to have a national standard and know these are the minimum images you have to take for this particular exam, and not to shortcut your time, because time is quality. Right. And having the best equipment available also is an investment. But sometimes I go through 3 different ultrasound probes on one exam because it's more superficial in one area. I need a hockey stick with a higher megahertz, or I have an abdomen. I need a deep focusing 3.5, 2.5. It's not unusual for me to use 3 different ultrasound probes just for one exam. It's applying what you know and using the highest quality image you can find. Exactly. It does make a difference.
It does. And I love when you talked about, engaging the physicians, engaging the other stakeholders in the hospital or in the bigger, clinic. So important really for individuals in that role to do that. There's a lot of collaboration that has to happen to get and to move the needle on. So it's definitely, again, it goes back to, like you said, working in a team. It cannot be something that's siloed, especially not for imaging leaders or managers.
Well, I was fortunate in that at Good Samaritan Hospital and when I was at Yale, they involved me in discussions at medical rounds and also meetings. I would go to cardiology and medical meetings, and they would ask my opinions on certain things, and to be included in that was very rewarding, and we had a collaborative team.
Right, makes a difference.
Yes.
Now, keeping on this, going down this discussion of patient care, when we talk about how do we ensure excellence in patient care, I mean, I think there's a lot of, basic principles that we can all agree on, but you yourself, again, with the experience you have and the different roles you've held, how do you ensure that your team delivers high quality, patient-centered care? Something that really doesn't end up feeling like a cold treatment, which is a hard thing to do when you have many patients at once and clinicians get tired, and especially if you have a big team. So could you just walk us through your process of how you approach that challenge before?
Well, I'm very fortunate to work with Dr. Bradley Hill, who is a Fogarty-trained vascular surgeon. He was with Dr. Fogarty for 7 years. And he and I have the same philosophy in patient care. And it's find out, number one, why they're there. Find out what was the CT. Did they have another ultrasound? What is their history? What are their risk factors? It takes time. It's just 5 minutes can save you 20 or 30 minutes with an examination. Is the patient better or are they worse? Did they have an intervention? Did they put in a stent? Where was the area that they ballooned? These are all the things that really you teach your students. I have students, and we have gone on to hire some students because they have just followed our whole format in patient care and knowing what we're doing before we start the patient, before we put the probe on the patient. And I always teach my students to welcome the patient, thank them for coming on time. Thank you for not eating this morning. I know it's tough, but we'll be done in a few minutes. Knowing what you're looking for and knowing the results, it is so valuable. It's so valuable because you're giving the physician the number one. Yes, your surgery worked. We won't need any follow-up for 6 months. Or this patient does need surgery, and here's what I found. We do an awful lot of dialysis patients. We see them from the vein mapping. Vein mappings are so important to spend the time going through the protocol. And like I said, Dr. Hill is just an incredible gifted surgeon for endovascular and open. And there aren't many people around anymore, vascular surgeons, that can really handle an open surgery. He's one of them, and he's incredibly trained. He's incredible. It's incredible for me to feel like the person I'm talking to is approachable, that they're not going to say something short to me and walk away. That the collaboration is so important. And that's how I avoided burnout all these years. I mean, I went to one group I was working for part-time while I was at Good Sam that would make up the symptoms on a patient just to get a study. And I said, I really don't feel comfortable with this. This diagnosis is going to go with them for the rest of their lives, and it's going to affect their insurance. Well, just do it because I said so. And I said, I really can't do this anymore. I have to resign. And, I think I was making $50 an hour back then, and they offered to pay me $100 an hour. And I said, no, I can't. I've never felt like I chased a job because of money. I chased a job because of quality. And I stayed with people that were on the same page as I was to deliver good patient care. And you don't have to do a surgery if it's not warranted.
That is such a solid point, right, of maintaining high ethics.
Your integrity.
Right, the integrity. Like, We really cannot deliver a high standard of patient-centered care, if clinicians themselves don't maintain the integrity, don't have high ethical standards. So that's really great to hear, and very encouraging just how you stood your ground. I think that's encouragement to maybe other clinicians who find themselves in that situation, or managers who are dealing with administrations that perhaps are not really practicing in the most ethical way. It takes that leap, right, to just say, I'm leaving. Like, I'm not willing to.
Yeah, and with when I worked for Philips, it was a real eye opener for doing the IRIS and learning Nate Werner and all the venous experts that I worked with. I mean, I was fortunate in that I covered from Napa to Salinas, and I went to Stanford as an ultrasound tech before, and now I am here in intervention. I mean, I was at a situation where things were just kind of flat. I wasn't doing anything new, and I got a phone call, and I knew some of the guys because I had done a lot of intervention with just ultrasound. We did balloon angioplasty on arms and legs with no C-arm. It was simply ultrasound. So I had to size the artery, find the disease, see how long the stent had to be, or the balloon, and inflate it, and then see what happened after. I mean, I did over 200 procedures like that, and it was very rewarding work. But going to work for Philips was a real eye-opener, and being in the interventional and in the surgical. And that's why I met Dr. Hill. He was my one of my clients, and I was at Good Samaritan Hospital, where I used to work for 20 years. I was in the control room, and a cardiologist I worked with said, "You know what, Denise? You need to go work for Dr. Hill." And I thought, oh, people telling me where I should work. But it was a wonderful experience working for Philips, and seeing how much work is needed for outflow in veins, because there's actually more venous disease than there is arterial, and how we can improve a patient's wound. And then going back to ultrasound and working with Dr. Hill. It's 10 minutes from my house. It's a great setup. It's a wonderful environment. I have wonderful students. I have great staff. We have 7 MAs that are all pre-med, that go on to become doctors because of Dr. Hill training them. And I have people at the front desk that are sharp and know what to do, and they listen to me. I worked with some people for 15 years who still didn't know how to properly schedule a patient. So I'm really very fortunate to be in a great learning and academic setting. So
That's great. That's great. What a fantastic combination, right, of the different factors that interests you, and just really finding a great spot, right? I'm sure you found many over the years, but this is definitely a great practice. If you are high-level disinfecting your ultrasound transducer, it's likely you're soaking the probe or using an automated HLD device. But there's a better option out there. TriStel Ult can high-level disinfect your transducer in just 2 minutes and costs under $3 per cycle. Sound too good to be true? Request a brochure today and learn why so many practices are switching over to TriStel Ult. Visit us.edm-imaging.com/TriStel. That's TRISTEL. And now, back to the show. Now, continuing on the topic of leadership itself, right? Because you've been in leadership for a while. We've already talked a lot about management, but when we talk about leadership, that's a little different, right? Because that also requires team development, developing students. I know you've mentioned students many times. I'm sure you've worked with several over the years. So could you tell us a little bit of, the strategies that you employ to build and maintain a cohesive and high-performing imaging team, and also how you then develop other leaders and or have done so in the past.
I remind people that their job is so important and they do need the time to do it. A surgeon goes into an operating room. They have, 2 to 3 hours to fix a leg. We have half an hour. So I impress upon my students and my staff that, yes, you do need a half hour to do this exam. And don't let anybody tell you you can't. You have to stand up for yourself. Right. If you have a new, say you have a new skill that's coming into your department. We've started doing the wavelength with BARD, and that we're taking a vein and an artery, and they do the ablation with endovascular instead of open. It saves the patient a surgery. So with that, we have to establish guidelines. We have to establish protocols. All our protocols are in the machine. It basically walks every single ultrasound technologist through an examination and annotates it and does everything. And that comes from leadership. That comes from my strength, telling them, you can do this. This is what we have, the tools that we have. And don't let anyone disrupt you. You are in charge. This is your situation. You have to inform people, these are the machines we need, this is the time we need, and this is the quality you're going to get from this. So when we go in, we have the know-how and the plan to execute. And I always let them know, people will take advantage of you if you go fast and shortcut something. But it won't be long before it catches up with you, in that your errors will become major. It's important, are you doing the right leg? Did you have lunch? Did you take a break? Do you feel like you're calm enough to let the information come in? Because if you're busy and your mind is busy, you don't have the concentration you need to do a good job. So that's really what I try to instill on people, is confidence and better outcomes.
So that's such good advice. I mean, I've heard that before from other imaging managers, that teaching sonographers or technologists, and honestly, this goes for even people outside of imaging, just in whatever clinical area, teaching them to advocate for themselves is so important in a healthcare setting, right? The clinician has to push for what they need to be able to do their job effectively, as you're saying, to eat lunch, to not be burnt out. So important. I mean, we talk about burnout, but then we also sometimes forget to talk about the ways to prevent it, and how sometimes it begins to with the leadership, as you're saying, and giving them that room, but also just the individual also advocating for themselves. Very important to stand one's ground. And I'm sure that that's also the way in which you've been able to develop other imaging leaders, right? By, teaching them to advocate for themselves and prioritize the patient care and the quality.
Yeah, I always tell them, you're in control. You wag the tail. The tail doesn't wag the dog. Because people will try to take advantage of you, and they will. And it's just a natural human experience. But there are certain things that you have to check. We always check the deep system before we start a reflux study, which is, mostly for the superficial and then the deep later. We always check to make sure there's no clot. Well, I had a couple of patients, and my student turned around and said, Denise? So, well, I think we have to change the exam now, don't we? It's now a deep vein thrombosis instead of a reflex study. This patient has clot in their popliteal. Now, if I went and just started imaging forward and backward, the length and the cross section before looking at the whole leg, and I'm squishing on the leg, maybe that's not such a great idea if a patient has a clot further down. I had a patient come in and they said that he didn't have a good pulse. Well, the reason why he didn't have a good pulse was he had clotted his entire deep system and he had no outflow, so his arterial was backing up. And I found it just because I was at the pop and I turned and I thought, this isn't compressing. So I called his doctor and said, well, I need a different order now. We did the artery, but now we need a deep vein thrombosis. He's clotted and he doesn't have any outflow. So that kind of, be curious, talk to your patient, thank them for coming in, see how they're doing, have a relationship. It makes the time go faster. Your patients appreciate it. I don't give them information. I tell them, Dr. Hill's the expert. He'll go over everything with you, everything that I've done. And it puts on it easy. And I have patients come back all the time. I have patients that I saw at other practices or the hospital. And I said, you know what? I saw you 20 years ago. I mean, it's just, I don't know how to retire because I have so much fun.
Well, that's great. I think that's the goal. And I think a lot of, especially when sonographers might start off, clinicians start off, it's really tough. And so they think, man, am I ever gonna, well, you could get to the level that you're at, definitely, right? You could definitely fall in love with it over and over again. That's just great to hear. Now, over the years, even though I'm sure, you've enjoyed it a lot, there's had to have been challenges. Could you walk us through some of the challenges that you're witnessing now? So what sort of emerging trends and challenges have you witnessed in the field of imaging, especially, for example, as it relates to AI? What's your opinion on it? How do you feel we're integrating it? Are we going too fast, too slow? Would love to hear what you have to say.
Well, ultrasound really took off early on. And then it just, when CT and MR came in, the whole development of new technology changed. So just to give you an example, for a 3D, you don't get reimbursed for a 3D. If you want, say, the baby boutiques where they do a 3D of the face and whatnot, well, that you pay cash to go in and do because there is no reimbursement for three-dimensional. So if I today can take an ultrasound probe and run it down a leg within 10 seconds from the groin to the knee, I can get a full length of an entire artery. Can I measure it? Yes, you can look at the best. So what we need with AI is we have the technology, we have the 3D, we have to get reimbursed for it because we can go so much faster. We can hit a button and measure a vein quickly because what really slows us down on any vein examination, you have to do the size of the vein, you have to do the depth of the vein, you have to do the reflux, you have to measure the time of the reflux. AI is going to offer us running the probe down and measuring the vein, or simply hovering over a vessel and hitting a button. We can tell digitally how big that was. Years ago, before there was any scan converters or anything, I had an oscilloscope. I scanned a patient. I put the probe on the screen. I hit a button. Calipers came down, 1 centimeter calipers. I had to measure on a Polaroid or any paper the size of a gallbladder with calipers. It's there today. We can do it. Wow. And if my engineering husband would let me patent it, I would.
Right. No, it's incredible, right? How we're advancing so fast. Now, I have heard, though, some people push back and say, okay, but we need to be careful, right? We need to be careful because can we trust the interpretation of the AI? And then there's the people who say, well, AI is going to replace us. I don't really think so. I don't think it's going to replace the sonographer. But what would you say to those individuals who maybe have a great apprehension to it, aren't sure about it? What would be your advice to them?
Well, it won't replace us, but it will make your job easier. It will make your job faster, which is what we do, what we all want. Right. If we can get more patients in for good quality imaging and do it smarter, the key is to do it smarter. And like I said, the technology is there. We just have to implement it and get paid for it, because they are cutting a lot of reimbursement. I just got a warning this morning that they're going to try and cut transcranial Doppler. Well, there's no greater way to follow a patient with a subarachnoid bleed and find out when they are going to peak in flow to treat them so they can walk out of a hospital. It is so important, and CT and MR is not the answer, nor following up a patient. Ultrasound is the answer. We don't need to radiate patients. We don't need to use contrast. We don't need to take another AAA and put them into renal failure. Along with the IVUS as well. The IVUS saves contrast. It sizes the vessel. It allows you to put an appropriate stent in, because you put the stent in that's too small, it made the person worse. So appropriate management with IR and ultrasound together. Sometimes you want to know if your catheter is in the right place. Just put an ultrasound probe on the leg. It will tell you. It will also guide you through your guide wire. You want to get in and out through these little channels of plaque? Just put a probe on. You've got 3 centimeters of length, and you can get a faster access to the vessel in IR, and you can do better negotiation with the wire and with IGUS. Saves on contrast, saves on radiation. I had a wonderful friend, Dr. Peter Wells, very famous physicist, and he once said to me, Denise, a girl's best friend is the inverse square law, and that is the greater the distance, the greater the protection.
No, I mean, this is why, awareness is important around ultrasound, right? Because it's unfortunate to hear what you just said about the reimbursement. But that's why it's important that organizations continue to advocate for ultrasound imaging, right? Which is something that the AIUM, the SGMS, I know do often. But it's important to get the word out there, especially with things like point of care ultrasound, right? That's a trend that I think accelerated, of course, with the COVID-19 pandemic. But the benefit of point of care being used now more is we have more accessibility, right? Not everyone can get to a place that has a big ultrasound machine. But those are things that we have to keep advocating for, just so that it doesn't kind of get lost on perhaps the government or insurers and
right.
patients themselves, for them to be aware, right?
Yeah, I educate I educate my patients all the time. Every time I do a renal artery, I turn that machine, the screen around, and I show them. I said, this is the only modality there you can see the flow inside the kidney without radiation, without dye. I can look inside your kidney and actually see the veins and the arteries, and I can tell if that kidney is functioning well. I can look at the length. I can look for a cyst. I can see if there's any resistance in the flow into your kidney. I can look at the renal artery and see if you need a stent. I can follow it when you get a stent. You don't have to have a CT. You don't have to have contrast, because this is contrast. This is something that we've been given with science, and we just have to apply it and implement it.
Ultrasound is a very, very powerful tool, powerful modality, and very safe. So important to advocate for that. Now, the conversation has been great, but I know that you probably have to go. You're very busy. So could you just give us some final thoughts? I wanted to ask, what advice would you give to aspiring image leaders that are aiming for that efficiency? They're aiming for that excellence in patient care, and they want to have a career such as yours with such longevity. What advice would you give them?
I would encourage them to go to local and national conferences. There was a period there where I didn't learn anything, and I knew it. And I had to get out there. And it's like, people will say to me, oh, you can do this with your hand tied behind your back. And you know so much, and you know so this. I learned so much, even from my students asking me questions and saying, oh, yeah, maybe we can do it a different way. Be curious. Know that you have options. You are an ultrasound technologist. You can go into academia. You can work at a local teaching hospital. You can work at a community hospital. You can take call if you want. You can work for an ultrasound company and have a great career educating people in the field as to how they can use that system. You can go into sales if you want. Everyone I worked with Philips, I was a clinical specialist. Every single one of them got promoted within 2 years into sales, and they enjoyed it, and they had a great time. I started in X-ray. I went into ultrasound. I went into academia. I published a lot of papers. I presented a lot of papers. I've educated a lot of people. I went into commercial ultrasound early on and worked with Diasonics in 1979 and stayed with them until 83. And then I went back into clinical ultrasound. Then I went with Dr. Fogarty and really started, you know what? I want to do this paper. Okay, you've got my cooperation. Without Dr. Fogarty, I couldn't have gone into the ICU and had access to a patient in post-op. No way. With his cooperation, I was able to publish the paper. I was the first author to describe tarvis parvis in a distal renal artery looking for a stenosis, confirmed it at 60 to 80% because we examined them in the morning diseased, and I examined them in the afternoon fixed after atherectomy with Dr. John Simpson. Also, going from, I was a supervisor at a hospital. Well, why? Because I cared about it. I cared about my staff. And I was ready to take it on. I lived 10 minutes from the hospital. It was a great job. I had a wonderful opportunity. And then I went back into commercial with Philips. And I was there 2.5 years. I had a wonderful time going back with people. And I go to high school every now and then, and I teach them career days. Yes, this is a career that is available to you. There are some people who, can work part-time and make a decent living to even buy a house. Right. There are salespeople that I know make close to $500,000 a year. Mm-hmm. It's also relationships with other people helps you. Because before I would go into a new physician, I looked them up. I wanted to know where they went to medical school, what were their specialties, what were their interests, how could I help them? Those kind of things, looking broad within your career, are available to you. Go to a conference, talk to people in booths, find out how they ended up where they were. Don't get burned out. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy your patients, and stand up for yourself. Because in the end, it's all worth it.
I love what you say about going out, going to conferences, meeting people, networking. That is so important. And we've had other leaders such as yourself on this show, and they have also given the same advice. And I think it's so important to remind people of that, because especially I would say the current generation of students graduating, where the young generation, sometimes we're on our phones too much, we're a little too into ourselves, and it's so important to have that human connection, and to make those connections. That really makes the difference. And ultrasound is a world of endless possibilities. So it's really encouraging to hear that, just the difference that it makes over the course of a career, which this absolutely is a career. I'm so glad you said that. And so important for high school students, young people who are thinking of their career, to realize that this is absolutely a very, very viable one, and a very good one that can be very rewarding if you enjoy it.
Exactly. I would tell the high school students, you can go to a local community college and you can have a job within 2 years and making good money and contributing to the community. That's the reason why I like having the students. I have students from Gurnick Academy, and I train them, and I start them out slow, and I don't overwhelm them. I try to spoon feed them and give them the confidence, and then move on to the next step, then move on to the next exam, and have them have the confidence. Because once you have that confidence, it emulates to your patient and to your staff. And it also gives you the confidence that you made the right decision. You made the right diagnosis. You have the images to back it up.
Such great advice. Thank you again, Denise.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really been a wonderful experience for me. I do enjoy it. Like I said, I don't know how to retire. I think I'll always be a consultant.
That's good. That's good. We need more people such as yourself in the U.S. healthcare system.
Yeah, I'm speaking in March at the WAVES conference in Tulum, Mexico. It's put on by Brian Sapp, great colleague, wonderful advocate for ultrasound and vascular testing. So I'll be there in March. And going through my entire career, going all the way back from A mode and doing neuro and cardiac and early OBGYN, where we were just looking on an oscilloscope, blips, right?
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, if there's any listeners that are going to be in Tulum at that time, I mean, now they know where to find you and where to hear more from you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been an honor to have someone such as yourself on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Scoop on Ultrasound. Subscribe today to be notified when new episodes are released, and visit our website, us.edm-imaging.com, to learn more about who we are and what we do.